Hey guys, Alex from Central Florida Enthusiast, and today we're actually going to be starting one of a three-part video series on the history of roller coasters. One obviously on today, Wednesday, Friday, and then Monday. Today we're going to be talking about the pre-Aero history of roller coasters. So let's go. Alright, so our earliest knowledge of roller coasters actually dates back to Russia, actually, just slightly before the Napoleonic War. That was when Napoleon invaded Russia. And essentially they had these huge wooden slopes that they would cover with water, had the water turn to ice, and basically turn them, I guess you can call it in today's standards a water slide, but it was an ice slide, and it was carts. So it was essentially a man-made sledding hill, but they would be dubbed Russian mountains, and these were insanely popular with the rich. So when Napoleon actually came to invade Russia during the Napoleonic War a few years later, he saw these Russian mountains and he loved the concept. So they brought it back to France, and this is a very common thing throughout history where a war will happen, people will go and see that country's inventions and take it back to their country and expand upon it. If you take cars, Carroll Shelby did the same with all the sports cars he saw in Europe during World War II, and he pretty much, that was what caused him to essentially build the Shelby Mustang. You might have heard of that. So some of the most influential stuff actually happens this way, and coasters were no different. So when Napoleon brought back these Russian mountains, obviously France is not as cold as Russia, so they would put wheels on them. They were just little sleds, but instead of rails for the ice, they would have wheels. And when they got to France, they essentially created the very first permanent, well, not just permanent, but the world's first complete circuit. So both ends of the coaster met. And you guys should know what full circuit means. The first one was in France. So by the time we got to America in about the 1850s kind of time, in Pennsylvania, there was a railway, and it went down a slope, a very steep slope, and it was powered by gravity. And there was a man who actually saw this, and his name was Lamarcus Thompson, and he thought, I could create a fair ride with this idea. And he essentially created what is now considered to be the first, by modern definitions, a roller coaster. The French made it full circuit, but they were still essentially basically skateboards going down a slope. This would be like an actual car that rides in a trough. The upstop wheel had not been invented yet at this point, so it was essentially just side friction coasters. And he built the first one in Coney Island, and that was actually very, very radical of him to put that there, because he was a devout, or there was several devout Christians who they wanted to find a more pure and wholesome form of amusement, and Coney Island at this time was kind of, you'd be very hard, let's just say you'd be very hard pressed to find a Sunday morning service there. There's a lot of drinking, a lot of prostitution. It was a very debaucherous neighborhood. And they decided, well, people are going here for amusement. So let's try to give them pure and wholesome amusement. And they built the very first switchback railway there. From there, it just took off like wildfire. People love these things. These things were not that fast. They only went like 6 or 8 miles an hour. And they would basically go down dips from one tower to another tower, where then they would go on a transfer and then go down the other side. And there was no seatbelts. It was essentially just a bench. But at the time, that was like, it was a crazy concept. And people loved it. So after this, they essentially, roller coasters kept on getting longer. They kept on getting faster. They actually started to experiment with rides that go upside down. But because there was no upstop wheels, they had to go at an insane speed into a very small loop. And the forces that were essentially necessary to keep the car from falling out, those forces would give people whiplash. They would break. Sometimes people would break their bones. Almost everyone passed out. It was not safe. And I think the longest one lasted only like 10 years tops. And that's being generous. I think most of them only survived like a year or less. So prior to the flip-flap railway, Lamarcus Thompson's company, the Scenic Railway Company, they had grown exponentially from the 1880s going on into the new millennium. And at around 1903, Leap the Dips, which is actually the oldest operating roller coaster on the planet today. Unfortunately, that ride is standing but not operating at the current moment, but the park is trying to reopen. It looks like it'll probably reopen for next year. So prior to World War II, we had saw a boom in roller coaster popularity. And then during the war, and slightly before, well, actually a little bit before the war, popularity kind of decreased a little bit, mainly because of the lack of safety in a lot of these rides. There is some absolutely insane patents. There was like one patent that showed like a car, like a roller coaster car getting put into like a cannon, where they would launch you into like this bowl where then it would like spin around and go down like a pipe or something. Yeah, that sounds perfectly safe and like nothing could possibly go wrong. So public distrust towards the industry kind of grew. So come 1919, after the First World War, there's a man named John A. Miller, and he filed a patent for the upstop wheel. And now, what is the upstop wheel? Well, if you remember the very first video on Mako that I actually showed you, underneath the trains of Mako, like all of its inner workings, the upstop wheel is the wheel that goes on the bottom side of the track and it prevents the light from going off, essentially. possibility of derailment is higher than like a regular roller coaster with an up-stop wheel. Another thing that John A. Miller invented was the anti-rollback device. When you go work the lift hill, that clicking sound you hear, that's the anti-rollback. John A. Miller was the guy who invented that. Absolutely one of the most important people to the roller coaster industry ever. He's up there with Marcus Thompson, Walt Disney, Ron Taylor, and in today's world, Alan Shoki. Very important person. So once John Miller filed these patents, he wasted no time and began construction on Jackrabbit at Kennywood. And during this time period, rides like Coney Island Cyclone, the Santa Cruz Boardwalk Giant Dipper, or Big Dipper, and the Big Dipper at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. All these rides were kind of made in this time period. And they would either be directly made by John A. Miller, or it would be a collaboration of designs with various other designers. So, and these rides were some of the most influential rides in history. Even today, these rides are still incredibly influential because they were really the rides that sparked that thought in our head of, I want the tallest and I want the fastest coaster in the world. And for the longest time, the Coney Island Cyclone was that ride. And that's why that ride is actually like so incredibly protected. So during this time period, over 2,000 something rides were created, but only a few of them still remain to this day. And this growth of roller coaster popularity, it would not last very long, because when the Great Depression hit, nobody was going to theme parks. It looked like that was what killed the roller coaster and just amusement park industry. It wasn't until 1956 until the love for theme parks really got reimagined. But that's another topic for Friday's video. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Alex from Central Florida Enthusiast. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you already are, hit that bell notification and leave us a comment, leave us a like, let us know what you think. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Alex checking out. Bye.